Chapter 1471. June Mountains Yeting Court. From afar, one could see the continuous rise and fall of the mountains, which were steep and straight. In the center of the jade-green courtyard, 3 sides were surrounded by water. The scenery was beautiful and pleasant. Once they arrived at their destination, Princess Mi impatiently hopped out of the carriage. She stretched out her arms and made a hugging gesture as she giggled. Good, good. No zombies or mutated beasts, and such a large jade-green lake can be maintained. The trees provide shade, and the fragrance of flowers assails the nostrils. Ha ha ha, I like this place. Arbor lifted the curtain and expressionlessly crawled out of the carriage. Hearing Princess Mi's words, for some reason, she actually subconsciously looked back and forth. Haitang immediately assumed a defensive posture and vigilantly looked around before whispering, "Crown Princess, as Princess Mi said, there are no mutated zombies or zombie beasts appearing." Xiao Mi's mouth twitched, and she glanced at Arbor from the corner of her eyes. "Cough, younger sister. Your bodyguard is rather interesting. He also appears to be very skilled." At this time, the noble ladies of the other kingdoms and the young misses of the patrician families all crawled out of their accompanying carriages and looked at the beautiful scenery in front of them with pleasant surprise. Her Majesty the Queen's mood improved greatly, and she said to everyone with a smile, "This place is the same as June Mountain's Wong family's hunting ground. There are people specially assigned to watch over this place." As expected of Northern Mo's fortifications, Southern Bailey's 5th Princess Bailey Zhan couldn't help but sigh. To be able to plan such a large fortification in such an orderly manner, the entire fortification, from the building defense to the perfect protection mechanism and the deployment of personnel, could be seen from every aspect of it that it was extraordinary. June Mountain's Yeting Court didn't seem to have changed much from the environment before the zombie outbreak. Previously, some mutated zombie beasts appeared in the lake here, but there weren't many of them, so they were promptly dealt with. Now, there are about 70 to 80% fewer aquatic animals in this body of water. Empress Zhao sighed. "Everyone, don't worry. Let's board the ship first." "Your Majesty, please." Everyone courteously let her go first. Docked at the shore was an exquisite and gorgeous 3-story pleasure boat. Under the sunlight, the top of the pleasure boat, which was outlined with glazed tiles, flickered with a very dazzling light. Under the lead of Empress Zhao, the group boarded the pleasure boat one by one. The boat slowly left the shore and headed towards the center of the lake. Yeting Court was located on a small island in the middle of the green water. From afar, it looked as if it was being embraced by a pool of clear water. The green leaves appeared to be full of vitality in people's eyes. That should be a world that hasn't been polluted, everyone thought excitedly. Arbor was also curious. It was her first time here. Unexpectedly, there was such a strange courtyard in the vicinity of Mount June. It existed independently in this world. Nyong Nyong. Since this Yeting Court has not been contaminated by zombie beasts, why not move here? Jean Hongwan from Northern Wei's Jean Clan Fort was a straightforward girl. She couldn't help but be curious when she saw that the environment here was so beautiful and lush that it surpassed even the royal palace. Empress Zhao explained with a smile, previously, there were mutated beasts roaming about, but the imperial court had always sent people to take care of this place and many small operations teams to complete missions here. Look, there are almost no aquatic animals in this lake. Chapter 1472. Everyone lowered their heads to look at the awe-inspiring surface of the lake. Sure enough, the water was incomparably clear, and there weren't even many small fish in the water. This Yeting Court is only a small resort after all. How can it fit so many people from the palace? Consort Cheng continued with a smile. Jean Hongwan couldn't help but be taken aback before saying with a smile, "It was Hongwan who didn't think things through." She only thought that it wasn't easy to have a pure land in this chaotic world, but she didn't consider that there were already several hundred concubines in Northern Mo's great king's 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, not to mention the many eunuchs, palace maids, and guards. Where could they fit people? A small Yeting Court could fit 3 palaces, but it couldn't fit 6 courtyards. Empress Zhao waved her hand with a smile, and the group followed the current to the front of the island. After reaching the shore, everyone went ashore in a single file and excitedly followed Empress Zhao into Yeting Court. Since this courtyard was used as the Wang family's leisure resort, it was naturally meticulously taken care of. Today, Her Majesty the Queen was bringing honored guests over, so early in the morning, the steward of the resort led a group of servants to wait in front of the courtyard. When he saw the Queen's group arrive, he hurriedly went forward to welcome them in with a fawning smile. The steward was a middle-aged man with a fat head and big ears. It seemed that he lived quite freely in this Yeting Court. "Your Majesty, honored guests, please follow this humble one." That steward cheerfully led everyone into the inner court. "Will everyone be first assigned to a courtyard to stay in, or will this humble one first bring honored guests to tour Yeting Court? We didn't spend much time on this carriage journey, so we shouldn't be tired." Queen Zhao looked at everyone with a chuckle and said, "Steward Hu, please lead us around this court for a while." "All right. After you, Your Majesty, honored guests." Steward Hu smiled until his chubby white face squeezed out streaks of flesh. At this time, a pampered voice resounded, "This princess heard that your Yeting Court has a type of bamboo shoot that is extremely delicious and delightful to eat. Moreover, after eating it, one would feel that their profound energy is much more abundant. Is this true?" Steward Hu was a person with good eyesight. The moment he turned his head, he immediately realized that the one who was stirring up trouble was the fourth princess of the royal family, Mo Shuang, the famous unruly princess. He hurriedly nodded and smiled apologetically. "Fourth princess is right." However, the production of this spiritual bamboo shoot was extremely low throughout the year. Especially in the past 3 years, it had basically reached the point of extinction. The small amount of spiritual bamboo shoots produced every year are also presented to the Empress Dowager and the Great King. After saying that, he looked at fourth Princess Mo Shuang with a troubled expression, as if he wanted to say something but stopped himself. It was said that this fourth princess was a normal person and had nothing to do with a mystic cultivator. He didn't know why she suddenly thought of this. So what if spirit bamboo shoots can subtly raise one's profound strength? You, the fourth princess, don't even have a thought of profound strength, so eating it would just be a waste. Where is it? The young crown princess glanced curiously at Steward Hu. When Steward Hu saw this, he hurriedly cupped his hands towards the young crown princess, his expression clearly flattering. "Crown princess, please follow this humble one. This humble one can bring honored guests over to take a look. It's just that we haven't picked any fresh spiritual bamboo shoots this year." As he spoke, he sighed and brought everyone to the bank of a stream. He pointed at the rows of bamboo on the bank of the stream and said, "Your Majesty, honored guests, this place is called Qingxi. The spiritual bamboo shoots are over there." Chapter 1473. Qiao Mu pattered over to a thin bamboo that was more than a meter tall and flicked it with her finger. This bamboo was thin and short, and it didn't have any ornamental value. It was completely incomparable to the bamboo forest that the Holy Water Sect's old sect master had raised back then. "Master, these really are spiritual bamboo shoots." Chocho's voice abruptly rang out. Then, without needing her to lift a finger, 2 thin and soft vines had already burrowed out of her sleeves and directly dug up the ground, dragging in a small section of bamboo shoot. "Hee hee." Chocho laughed happily. "Master, you're in luck. Walk further in and we'll dig up more spiritual bamboo shoots. At that time, we can also plant a bamboo forest on Paradise Planet. How about it?" The more Chocho spoke, the more excited it became. In the future, our Paradise Planet will have flowers, bamboos, and trees. Ha ha ha, don't you feel especially perfect? MHM. Arbor nodded and then asked, "Flowers?" "Jasper begonia." Chocho smiled proudly and said, "Master, I helped you plant a large sea of jasper begonia flowers. Do you like them? Come in and play if you have nothing to do." Arbor couldn't help but find it funny. She didn't expect that this little fellow would also steal the jasper begonia from her inner world into the paradise. "Don't drop the original pot. We still have to return it to grandmother later," Arbor exhorted. "Don't worry. Originally, There was a sumaru seed inside that jasper begonia that was wreaking havoc. Master, I took out the sumaru seed and planted it in the 100 Poison Valley. Ah, is that so? Abba couldn't help but feel astonished. This sumaru seed was a type of poisonous grass seed. Why would it fall into the jasper begonia and almost kill it? It really was a bit strange. As Abba spoke with Chocho, she walked further into the clear stream and had Chocho display its bandit nature. It dug up all the spiritual bamboo shoots that could be picked and dragged them back to the paradise. Master, Master, with little earth and little water's help now, the spiritual tea will probably take a while to grow. However, this spirit bamboo shoot doesn't have that many requirements. I reckon that if we raise it in our paradise for a few days, we'll be able to eat it soon. I saw that you dug up a lot of spiritual bamboo shoots. How could this caretaker who say that there are no spiritual bamboo shoots? Is he being dishonest? That's obvious. Chocho chuckled. This guy doesn't speak the truth. There's an 80% chance he's hiding something. Abba knew what was going on and purposely kicked away the soil beside the stream so that the only spiritual bamboo shoot that Chocho hadn't dug away could be seen. This bamboo shoot was simply too small and ugly, so Chocho didn't like it. Fourth Princess Emo Shuang's eyes were sharp, and she couldn't help but cry out when she saw it. Isn't that a spiritual bamboo shoot? Steward Hu, why did you say that you didn't find any spiritual bamboo shoots this year? Are you hiding something from Her Majesty the Queen? Oh my, in all honesty, how would I dare to deceive you all? Steward Hu's expression didn't change and his heart didn't skip a beat. Look at this little bamboo shoot. It's so crooked and wilted. In what way does it look like a spiritual bamboo shoot? Furthermore, if you all don't believe me, I can immediately have the servants cook this bamboo shoot for everyone to taste. This is definitely the most ordinary bamboo shoot and not a spiritual bamboo shoot. Hai Tang, where's the pot? The pot is here. Hai Tang took out a small black pot from her inner world and hugged it to her chest. She asked the Crown Princess with a serious expression, Crown Princess, should we cook it now? The little Crown Princess nodded vigorously. Cook it and taste it. Yes. Crown Princess. Chapter 1474. Seeing that everyone else was looking over dumbfoundedly, Hai Tang took out firewood and a rack from her inner world and placed the small black pot on top of it without another word. He casually took out a match and lit a fire. Then, he began to scrub the pot with the same method as before. After the water boiled, she threw the small bamboo shoots into the pot. The little Crown Princess also took out a handful of noodles from her inner world along with some ready-made shredded meat. Everyone looked at this master and servant pair dumbfoundedly. They were doing what? Aya, younger sister, I suddenly realized that I'm so hungry after smelling the aroma. It turns out that it's almost time for lunch. Give me a bowl later too. Xiaomi took out a bowl and chopsticks from her inner world and squatted next to the pot, staring at it eagerly. Empress Zhao's mouth twitched as she gazed speechlessly at this daughter-in-law. Commandery Princess En, who was walking next to her, couldn't help but laugh. Is the Crown Princess cooking lunch? There's no share for you. Abba gazed at her coldly before having Hai Tang scatter the noodles. It wasn't long before the pot of delicious and fragrant shredded meat and spiritual bamboo shoot noodles was finished. By this time, everyone had noticed that Manager who was standing on the side, had beads of cold sweat on his forehead, looking like he would faint at any moment. Empress Zhao's heart jolted, and she sent a look to the green mammy. Nanny Qing understood. With a wave of her hand, more than a dozen guards came out from the dark and formed a fan-shaped encirclement. They surrounded Steward who was covered in cold sweat. Abba took out a stack of bowls and filled a small half-bowl for Empress Zhao, Mou, Xiaomi, and Bailey Zhen. He had people pass it to them, and he and Hai Tang also got half a bowl each. The remaining half of the pot was left there for everyone to use. When everyone saw Empress Zhao and the others drink the soup in one gulp, their eyes narrowed into slits, looking very pleased. He hurriedly rushed forward to snatch the remaining half-pot of noodle soup. There were no more noodles left, but there was still some soup to drink. Those who were quick in grabbing quickly poured themselves half a bowl of soup, while those who were slow in grabbing could only watch helplessly. Mo Shuang and Yang Fengyan almost fought over 2 mouthfuls of soup. In the end, Mo Shuang gave a look to the accompanying guards to subdue Yang Fengyan, and she poured the last 2 mouthfuls of soup into her mouth. Once she drank it, whether her profound strength rose or not, it had nothing to do with her. In any case, she was just an ordinary person without any profound strength. She only felt that her mouth was overflowing with a fresh fragrance, and the 2 mouthfuls of spirit bamboo shoot soup simply left a rich aftertaste. How dare you? How dare you deceive the Empress Dowager and the great king? Empress Zhao's face instantly darkened. 2 guards immediately stepped forward and kicked caretaker who was sweating profusely, to his knees. Manager Hu hurriedly complained, "Your Majesty the Queen, please judge clearly. This lowly one doesn't dare to deceive the great king and the Empress Dowager. This lowly one really didn't know that the spirit bamboo shoots had already sprouted. If this lowly one knew, this lowly one would naturally have sent people to dig them up and present them to Your Majesty the Empress Dowager. You're full of nonsense." Empress Zhao angrily rebuked, "Tie him up. Search his residence." Manager whose face was filled with terror. He didn't know how things had developed to this point. These spirit bamboo shoots were clearly buried deep underground, and it wasn't as easy to dig up as ordinary bamboo shoots. Even he, who was stationed in this Yeting court all year round, accompanied by this bamboo forest, could only occasionally dig up 1 or 2 stalks of spirit bamboo shoots. Why was it that the crown princess could casually step on a stalk of spirit bamboo shoot? Very quickly, the people who were searching Manager whose residence ran back to report to Empress Zhao. Chapter 1475. Your Highness, we found a large storeroom under Manager Hu's room. There are many rations and supplies hidden inside, as well as large amounts of mystic currency and magnetite. Empress Zhao's expression instantly turned unsightly. She stared at Manager Hu with a sharp gaze and said, "Good. All these years, these spirit bamboo shoots have become tools for you to amass wealth." Manager Hu couldn't withstand the pressure anymore. He immediately knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly with a pale face. "Your Highness, spare my life, Your Highness, spare my life." "You unruly servant. You actually have the face to ask this consort to spare your life?" Empress Zhao was so angry that she laughed instead. "What are you still standing there for? Drag him out and chop him up for this consort." This unruly servant didn't consecrate the spirit bamboo shoots to the great king. Instead, he guarded this piece of land and became the great king himself. Good, 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 truly very good. Empress Zhao's eyes emitted a cold light. With a wave of her hand, 2 guards immediately stepped forward and dragged the wailing Manager Hu out. "No, you can't kill me. Your Highness the Queen." This time, Manager Hu was truly anxious. He panicked and said, "This old servant was sent here by Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu." "You can't kill me. You can't kill me." Consort Cheng's expression changed as she immediately looked towards her daughter-in-law, Shu Quan. Shu Quan's expression also changed several times as she hurriedly rebuked, "Nonsense, how could you be sent here by Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu? You're clearly trying to use Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu's name to deceive Her Highness the Queen." "No, no." Manager Hu struggled with all his might and shouted with a pale face, I'll confess everything. Your Highness the Queen, tell me, this servant is just a lowly manager. If there wasn't an order from above, how could I dare to embezzle the spirit bamboo shoots and sell them all these years? Besides, even if I were to sell these precious spirit bamboo shoots, I would still need a channel to successfully exchange them for the materials I need, right? Empress Zhao pondered for a moment, then waved her hand to have the imperial bodyguards drag the steward back. She looked at him coldly and said, "You're right. I don't think you have the guts to embezzle it. Tell me who is above you and who told you to do this." Shu Quan's eyelids twitched violently. She forcefully suppressed her flustered and short-of-breath emotions, and with a cold expression, she put on airs and shouted, "Wicked slave, You're about to die and you still dare to talk nonsense. Great King's second consort, don't interrupt now. Empress Zhao glanced at her coldly, a name already appearing in her mind. It's the Great King's son, it's all the Great King's son's orders. Steward who confessed everything in one go, and he continued to speak in one breath. In previous years, the Great King's son even instructed this servant to present 1/5 of the spirit bamboo shoots to Her Highness the Empress Dowager and His Majesty the Great King in the palace. But this year, for some reason, the Great King's son suddenly ran over to tell this servant that he's short on funds. It's not very convenient for him to do so, so he told this servant to keep all of the spirit bamboo shoots and not send a single one to the palace. You're speaking nonsense. Without waiting for the Great King's second consort Xu Quan to speak, Her Highness Consort Cheng cried out first. She pointed at Steward who was kneeling on the ground, and was so angry that her entire body was trembling non-stop. You damned lowly slave, someone come, someone come. Drag this lowly slave away from me. Consort Cheng, why are you in such a hurry? The matter hasn't even been discussed yet you're in such a hurry to have this servant die? Is it because you have a guilty conscience? Chapter 1476. Empress Zhao coldly glanced at Consort Cheng and indifferently waved her hand to stop her. She then turned to look at Manager who was kneeling on the ground. You wicked servant, you better think carefully before you speak. Who exactly instructed you to secretly hide the spiritual bamboo shoots and exchange them for private goods? It was His Highness the Great King. Manager who firmly believed that it was His Highness the Great King, as if he was biting onto a piece of fatty meat, refusing to let go even if he died. Consort Chang was so angry that her face and neck turned red. Suddenly, she almost lost control and ran forward. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws, wanting to scratch Manager who to death. Don't speak nonsense. You're slandering my son. When we return to the palace, I will personally explain this matter to the Great King. Empress Zhao coldly smiled. When the time comes, I will also ask Consort Cheng to be present and explain everything clearly. Don't blame this consort for not giving you a chance to refute. Your Highness, please listen to me. This matter has nothing to do with my Jiaoer. Your Highness. Consort Cheng was sweating profusely and wanted to refute, but how could Empress Zhao be willing to listen to her? She waved her hand and said, This consort is tired. Green Mammy, you will temporarily take over all matters in this Yiting court. Yes, this servant obeys. Green Mammy slanted her mouth and disdainfully swept a glance at Consort Cheng and the Great King's second consort Xu Quan. Like a rooster that had won a fight, she led everyone away and began to arrange everyone's food and lodging. After tossing and turning for the entire morning, Empress Zhao only drank a mouthful of broth and ate 2 chopsticks of noodles. Right now, she was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back. She only wanted to rest as soon as possible. Aber had a bountiful harvest, so she didn't care about how noisy this flock of orioles and swallows were and entered the court together with Princess Mi very quickly. The courtyard was allocated. Because this was only a private courtyard, with so many noble ladies arriving at once, it was naturally impossible for everyone to be assigned to a courtyard. Thus, they were randomly assigned to 2 or 3 people to a small courtyard. Little Crown Princess and Xiaomi were assigned to the same courtyard, and everyone was happy. However, Bai Li Zhan was assigned to the same place as Mo Shuang. She was really unhappy. After returning to their own courtyard, Aber asked Hai Tang to cook a pot of spirit bamboo shoot shredded pork noodles. This pot of noodles was shared between the 3 of them, so naturally, they were able to eat until they were full. Princess Mi ate to her heart's content. She reached out to rub her belly and said, Younger sister, do you think that mother-in-law of yours really doesn't know, or is she pretending not to know and taking advantage of the situation to make a fuss? What Princess Mi was talking about was naturally the matter of the spirit bamboo shoots. Qiao Mu sighed. Say, why do you think she brought us to this June Mountains Yiting court for no reason? Is it really just to entertain you princesses and noble ladies of other countries? That was because Empress Zhao had gathered enough evidence to use the excuse of entertaining the noble ladies to directly tear into Her Highness Consort Cheng. Princess Mi widened her eyes in shock. You? How did you know? I guessed. After Arbor finished the last mouthful of noodle soup, she threw the small bowl to Hai Tang to wash. Then, she walked towards the side room with her small hands folded. Eating and drinking to one's heart's content and having a nice afternoon nap, this is life Who cares how much of a ruckus she caused outside? In any case, it was none of her business. Master, I have planted the spirit bamboo shoots. Chochio's joyful voice sounded in her conscience. In the future, you will be a person with spirit bamboo shoots. Can spirit bamboo shoots still grow in that bamboo forest beside the clear stream? Arbor suddenly thought of a question. Chochio stared blankly for a moment before saying weakly, the last spirit bamboo shoot was eaten by you guys when you were cooking noodles. That is to say, spirit bamboo shoots were really extinct in this Yeting court. Heh, scammer. Chapter 1477. Alright then, in any case, the spiritual bamboo shoots that grew in this Yeting court would eventually be taken away by a pig like Steward who. It would be better to let her keep it and cultivate the spiritual bamboo shoots on a large scale. Arbor kicked off his shoes and fell onto the bed to take an afternoon nap. On the other side, Consort Cheng didn't even bother to bring over the lunch and kept pacing back and forth in the room while pinching her handkerchief. Other than Xu Quan, there were also two of the great king's concubines in the room, Concubine Zhang and Concubine Wu. Concubine Zhang had always been clumsy with words and wasn't very likable. When she saw Consort Cheng getting angry, she also kept her mouth shut and lowered her head, not daring to even breathe loudly. Concubine Wu, on the other hand, was smooth and slick. When she saw Consort Cheng like this, she hurriedly advised, Mother, don't be anxious. This is only Steward Who's one-sided statement. It's very easy for us to deal with a mere servant. There's still a chance for us to make a comeback. When Xu Quan heard this, she sighed. She had long warned her husband that before doing anything, he had to use his brain first. Don't just look for trouble and act rashly. The crown prince's position was so secure. It wasn't something that her husband could easily fight for. If he had stood by the crown prince's side early on, there wouldn't be so much trouble now. It was a pity that her words carried little weight. Her mother-in-law and husband had their own plans and considerations. She was like a piece of duckweed, tossing back and forth on the sea with no end in sight. Xu Quan, why aren't you saying anything? Compared to these two concubines, Consort Cheng trusted her daughter-in-law Xu Quan's brains more. However, Xu Quan didn't know what to say at this moment. When Consort Cheng saw her daughter-in-law's appearance, she couldn't help but become anxious. Xu Quan, say something. Mother, I feel that if this matter isn't handled properly, the great king's son might not be able to make a comeback in the future. What did you say? Consort Cheng immediately became anxious. It's not possible. Isn't it just a few lousy bamboo shoots? How could it possibly involve so many people? Xu Quan faintly glanced at Consort Cheng. Imperial Mother, Lord Husband is moving the cultivation resources of Her Highness the Empress Dowager, the Great King, and even the princes and grandsons. Her husband had exchanged these cultivation resources for cultivation coins and resources. What did he need so many cultivation coins and resources for? Do you think the Great King will let him go this time? Consort Cheng sat down on the stool stupidly. Xu Quan glanced at her coldly, shook her head, and walked out the door. Needless to say, on the surface, this matter was indeed the work of the Great King's son, but Consort Cheng and the entire Xu family should have known about it. Perhaps the Xu family had also benefited from it. She laughed self-deprecatingly. So what if she was being cautious? With such a father, mother, mother-in-law, and husband, she could forget about living a good life. Xu Quan, you're the smartest, so you should quickly think of a way to smooth things over. Xu Quan. Consort Cheng stared blankly as her daughter-in-law walked out without looking back. She angrily picked up a teacup and fiercely smashed it on the ground. This ingrate. Zhao respected her so much and asked her for advice on everything. In the end, at the most crucial moment, she was actually so heartless. Vice-consort Zhang was so frightened that she didn't dare say a word. Vice-consort Wu sneered and helped consort Cheng sit down. Imperial Mother, I think we can't count on elder sister. Right now, we can only think of a way ourselves and think of a countermeasure before we return to the palace. Chapter 1478. Abba slept for more than 2 hours before getting up. She couldn't care less about how badly battered Consort Cheng and the others were. The little fellow was sleeping quite soundly. There was no helping it. The battle was probably just around the corner. If she could sleep, she should hurry and sleep. Who knew what she would encounter tonight? Haitang brought in clean clothes. After washing up, Abba was informed that the great king's first consort was currently in the small courtyard and had been sitting there waiting for her for almost an entire afternoon. Shu Quan. The great king's first consort's demure face appeared in front of Abba's eyes. She nodded and said, "Invite her in." She didn't have much contact with Shu Quan normally, but after a few interactions, she felt that this great king's first consort was very decent and generous. Compared to her acerbic mother, she was much better. Shu Quan quickly walked in and immediately saw the little crown princess sitting by the table. Without another word, she lifted her skirt and was about to kneel. However, a strange force supported her knees and didn't allow her to kneel. "Eldest sister-in-law, what are you doing?" Abba glanced at her indifferently and said, "If you have something to say, sit down and talk." Shu Quan pursed her lips and froze there stiffly. She didn't know whether to get up or kneel. On the other hand, Shia very cleverly helped her up and sent her to sit beside the little crown princess. Crown princess. Shu Quan knows that the crime of being greedy for the ink spirit bamboo shoots is very serious. Husband, the entire king's estate, and even the Shu family wouldn't be safe and sound. Shu Quan isn't afraid of death and is willing to die with her husband. However, I would like to ask the crown princess to grant Shu Quan a small request and let my 3 children live. Abba glanced at her coldly. "Eldest sister-in-law, you should be begging the great king and the queen for this matter, not me." I know." Abba raised his hand to stop her from continuing. "I'm sure you know what the great king is like. To put it bluntly, the great king is so indecisive and overcautious. Is he the kind of person who would kill his eldest son? You know very well in your heart that your husband will be fine. With the great king's way of doing things, he will at most ground your husband for 5 years. Qiao Mu rolled her eyes. Shu Quan and Xia were flabbergasted when they heard these somewhat disrespectful words. As for your 3 sons and daughters, they are all the great king's grandsons. If he can't even bear to kill his own sons, how could he possibly implicate his own grandsons? Abba had long seen through the nature of the great king. Abba faintly swept a glance at Shu Quan and said, "Speak, what exactly are you planning? Since you're asking for my help, shouldn't you tell me the truth and be frank with me? Isn't that better?" Shu Quan didn't know why, but when she looked at the little crown princess with such a cold expression, her eyes unknowingly filled with tears, and they gushed out drop by drop. "Crown princess." Shu Quan abruptly stood up and knelt again. "Yes, I want to ask for your help. Just this once, not as the eldest sister-in-law, nor as the great king's consort. Purely as the mother of 3 children, I beg you to help me this once. I only want to be willful this once in my life." An hour later, Shu Quan solemnly bowed to the little crown princess. She stuffed a small medicine bottle under her sleeve and left quietly with a handkerchief in her hand tightly clenched. Other than the 4 people present, no one knew what had happened. She used the handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes and followed Shu Quan with a resolute expression. Chapter 1479. Haitang prepared a sumptuous dinner for the little crown princess. While she was serving the dishes, she asked with a dazed expression, "Crown princess, why are you helping the great king's first consort?" "If I want to help, I'll help. Why do you ask so many questions?" Abba said indifferently. Oh. Haitang answered blankly. This time, they'll definitely find a scapegoat for the spirit bamboo shoot incident. The great king doesn't want to watch his eldest son die, so old consort Shu and the Shu family will definitely be the scapegoats. Aba drank a mouthful of the delicious fish soup and narrowed her eyes. She looked up at Haitang and said, "Haitang, have you practiced cooking before?" His Highness said that Haitang must learn anything that the crown princess isn't good at. For example, cooking, needlework, farming. That's enough. Aba interrupted Haitang's words with a dark expression. She freaking felt like there were so many things that she didn't know. Haitang blinked. "Crown Princess, don't worry. Just bring Haitang with you wherever you go in the future. Haitang knows how to kill people and steal their goods. Below, Haitang knows how to cook." "I know everything." Aba turned to look at the dazed child and couldn't help but burst out in laughter. "Go away. This annoying fellow." Haitang cleaned up the table and walked out obediently. When she reached the door, she couldn't help but look back at Aba. "Crown Princess, you should actually smile more." Aba paused and shook her head helplessly. Their itinerary this time was to spend 3 happy days in Yeting Court. But looking at the current situation, Her Majesty the Queen and the others weren't in a good mood. They would probably return to the palace tomorrow evening. After all, Empress Zhao was in a hurry to report the spirit bamboo shoot incident to the great king, and Consort Chang couldn't eat or sleep well, so she wasn't in the mood to play. The two at the top didn't get along well, so their emotions naturally affected the people below. Aba's bed was newly made, and she had prepared her own bedding. Now, she could roll around on the fragrant mattress. Perfect. Before sleeping, Aba solemnly pulled Chirps out of the paradise and patted its little head. "When Master falls asleep later, remember to wake me up if anything happens in the middle of the night." The little fat squirrel hugged its belly and nodded. In the end, not only did she have a good night's sleep, but when Xiao Mu opened her eyes, she saw that fat squirrel curled up on her pillow with its belly protruding, sleeping even more deeply than her. Xiao Mu was truly speechless. Sure enough, these adorable little animals were each more unreliable than the other. She said she liked beasts. "Crown Prince Consort, you're awake." Haitang walked in and curtsied. "Her Majesty the Queen sent word just now. Today, all the princesses and young misses will be allowed to play in Yeting Court. Return to the palace before sunset." Aba nodded, thinking that it was more or less as she had predicted. Queen Zhao was impatient to return to the palace and report the spirit bamboo shoot incident to the great king. It didn't have much to do with her. Since the first half of the day was free time, then she might as well, reluctantly wander around. After the master and servant pair brought along Princess Mi, the trio wandered around Yeting Court for less than an hour before they started to wander around unhappily. It just so happened that there was a mountain-leaning pavilion up ahead, and the scenery looked pretty good. The trio walked over and paused when they got close. They saw Yi and supporting Empress Zhao as they walked into the pavilion, chatting and laughing. Chapter 1480. The two people were followed by a dozen or so smiling royal servants. Some were holding umbrellas, some were carrying food boxes, and some were carrying teapots and teacups. It was obvious that they were going to the pavilion up ahead to have a private chat. Xiaomi blurted out, "Younger sister, why do I feel like that whatever commandery princess looks more like Her Majesty the Queen's daughter-in-law than you?" Aba stared at commandery princessy and coldly, and the latter also saw her when she turned around. At an angle that Empress Zhao couldn't see, she pursed her lips at her and smiled provocatively at her with the posture of a victor. Aba was very disdainful of this. This woman had clearly already married into the vassal king of an Nan's estate, so why was she still so oblivious to her status? At this time, the queen also saw Aba and said with a nod, "Crown Princess, Princess Mi. If you don't have anything else to do, then come over and have a chat with me." Xiaomi tugged at Aba's sleeve, and Aba nodded. He walked up with Xiaomi and saluted according to etiquette before sitting down in the pavilion leaning against the mountain. This pavilion was built against the mountain and looked down from above, with a circle of bow-shaped seats set up around it. At a glance, one could see several floating clouds beneath their feet. If it were the early morning, it would definitely be a spectacular sight. After Ian sat down, she instructed Su-er to bring over tea and pastries. She then eagerly boiled tea and laid out the pastries for Her Majesty the Queen. Sure enough, she acted more like a daughter-in-law than an actual daughter-in-law. Xiaomi pursed her lips and couldn't resist criticizing, "Oh, Commandery Princess, and why do you have to do this servant's work? You're degrading your status. We, the sons and daughters of the Western Wastelands, aren't that particular. Just some plain water will do." Commandery Princess En was not angry at Xiaomi's sarcastic remark about her being a servant. Instead, she even smiled at her good-naturedly. It was as if the shrew Commandery Princess En that everyone saw as a joke on her wedding day no longer existed. She had returned to that elegant, dignified, and beautiful Commandery Princess En. However, Abba could clearly see great hostility and resentment in the woman's eyes. What was she pretending for? Xiao Mu swept her a glance before retracting her gaze. "Your Highness, please try this tea." A smile flitted across Commandery Princess Ian's beautiful face, and she presented a plain patterned teacup to the Queen with both hands. Empress Zhao nodded and motioned for her to put it down. "Crown Princess, you." Empress Zhao's gaze fell on the little fellow's head. In addition to a unique phoenix hairpin, there was also a bright and glistening flower embedded in the hair. "It's the jasper begonia flower." Empress Zhao blurted out. This jasper begonia looked even bigger than the one the Empress Dowager had. It looked really nice on the little crown princess's head. Abba thought that the Queen had taken a fancy to the only phoenix hairpin on her head. She hurriedly raised her hand to touch it and said, "I can't give this to you. Mo Lien made this for me, so it's mine." The Queen, on the side, Green Mammy rolled her eyes and said with a pout, "Crown Princess, our Her Majesty the Queen doesn't lack jewelry." "Then that's good." The little Crown Princess put down her small hand and said with a nod, "Even if you like it, I won't give it to you. It's mine." The Queen, why did she suddenly want to kill this daughter-in-law so much? Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Her son had taken a fancy to her daughter-in-law, her son liked her, so she must be calm, calm. She couldn't get angry, she couldn't get angry. Chapter 1481. The Queen took a deep breath and tried her best to put on an amiable expression. "Don't be angry, don't be angry. I can't anger my daughter-in-law to death. Crown Princess, this Queen is very fond of the jasper begonia you are wearing on your head. This flower is even bigger and brighter than the jasper begonia that this Queen saw at Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's place." Oh. Only then did the little Crown Princess realize that Her Majesty the Queen was looking at the flower on her head. Speaking of this flower, it was because she had casually removed a stalk of jasper begonia from the paradise when she was washing up in the morning. Hai Tang was so fond of it that she insisted on snatching it and trimming 3 to 4 flower ornaments out of it. How could the little Crown Princess be so happy to wear a flower on her head? She wasn't a plant, so why would she wear a flower? Yet after Hai Tang put it on her head, she thought that it looked pretty good, so she also wore it. The little Crown Princess thought that she couldn't waste the remaining flower ornaments, so she warmed them up with medicine and put them into separate boxes. Now that the Queen mentioned it, she took out 2 boxes, handing one to the Queen and the other to the impatient Xiaomi. "If you like it, then wear it. I have soaked this flower in medicine, so it should be able to stay bright for 10 days to half a month." Empress Zhao opened the box to take a look. She couldn't help feeling delighted when she saw the 2 exquisite, jade-colored flower ornaments inside. Needless to say, Xiaomi was grinning from ear to ear. She put away the box into her inner world and cupped her hands at Xiao Mu. "Younger sis, thank you so much." Before Empress Zhao could reply with a smile, Commandery Princess En widened her eyes in shock. She looked like she had been provoked, and she nearly jumped up from her stool. She rushed up to snatch the box in Empress Zhao's hands. "Your Majesty the Queen, you mustn't. This flower is poisonous." Empress Zhao's eyelid jerked, and the box in her hands was nearly snatched away by En. "What are you doing?" Empress Zhao's face darkened in displeasure. Your Majesty, please believe Yian's words and immediately summon the royal physicians who came with you. If they can't detect that this flower is poisonous, then Yian is willing to eat this flower. Ridiculous! Queen Zhao rebuked angrily. Then, she turned to look at the young crown prince consort with some suspicion in her eyes. The young crown prince consort shrugged nonchalantly and said, "Then let's invite the royal physician to examine it." This queen believes the crown prince consort. Queen Zhao glanced at Yian coldly and said, "Yian, you truly were too disrespectful today." At the start, Empress Zhao's to Empress Zhao, Empress, and the queen's, Empress. She saw that the jasper begonia on the crown princess's head was pretty, so the crown princess gifted her the remaining begonia flowers. How could she have planned this out in advance when this matter was so random? How could she have made the crown princess poison the begonia flowers in advance? She wasn't an idiot. Empress Zhao glared at Yian irritably. "All right, stop fooling around." Your Majesty, the crown princess herself said that she had soaked this flower in medicine. Aber and Xiaomi both rolled their eyes. The little crown princess crossed her arms grumpily as she ordered Haitang, "Go invite the royal physicians over. If the test shows that there's nothing wrong with my flowers, and, you said it yourself, eat these 2 flowers." Empress Zhao twitched her mouth. She couldn't bear to eat flowers even if Yian wanted to. How could such precious jasper begonia flowers be eaten? Soon, 2 royal physicians were summoned to the mountain-leaning pavilion. Chapter 1482. After the 2 people went up to perform the greetings, they conducted a strict and repeated test for poison on the 2 jasper begonia flowers inside Empress Zhao's box. The results naturally made Yian feel terrible. These flowers were actually not poisonous. Not only that, but the 2 royal physicians were also praising them endlessly, saying that these begonia flowers were extraordinarily effective. She wondered which great medical master had used this medicine, but this medicine was only beneficial to the human body and did not harm at all. Yian was truly flabbergasted when she heard this. She felt that these 2 royal physicians were forced by the crown princess's status to say such flattering words. "Eat!" The little crown princess grumpily shouted at Yian. Yet Empress Zhao quickly stuffed the box into her inner world and waved her hand calmly, saying, "How can we let her eat such a good flower ornament? Let's just choose 2 other flowers for her to eat." Xiaomi. Yian turned to look at Empress Zhao in disbelief, simply not daring to believe her ears. Just now, what did Empress Zhao mean by that? That meant, even Empress Zhao was not standing by her side anymore? But she was merely worried about Her Majesty the Queen's health, worried that she would be deceived by the crown princess. Going back on your word. Big liar. She clearly said that she would eat flowers, but now she wasn't eating them? She was lying to Jojo. The young crown prince consort stood up in a huff. She didn't say anything as she strode out of the pavilion in a huff. Empress Zhao suddenly had a feeling that she had bullied a child. What was the meaning of this? Xiaomi twitched her mouth before standing up with a cough. "Apologies, Your Majesty the Queen. I will be leaving first with the crown princess." When the little crown princess walked out of the pavilion, she suddenly turned around, her sharp gaze landing on Commandery Princess N. "You were the one who put the sumaru seed in grandmother's jasper begonia, right?" Commandery Princess N shuddered, and she reflexively shook her head and shouted, What sumaru? I don't know what you are talking about." The young crown princess merely swept her a cold glance. Since Yian had already explained everything with a guilty conscience, there was no need for her to continue asking. After all, in the entire Mo Kingdom capital, there was only one stalk of a precious flower like the jasper begonia in the hands of the Empress Dowager. Yian had mistakenly thought that her flowers were pruned from the jasper begonia potted plant that the Queen Dowager had discarded. This was also human nature. Only the person who had tampered with her grandmother's pot of jasper begonia could be sure that the jasper begonia was poisonous. Unfortunately, Yian did not know that there was currently a large sea of jasper crabapple flowers inside the little crown princess paradise. Arbor was so angry that she left. Xiaomi chased after her and said with a smile, all right, Jojo, don't worry. She won't eat flowers today, but I'll let her eat 10 liters of grass tomorrow to nourish her." Arbor's eyes lit up when he heard that. "You want to dig up some smelly grass for her to eat? Okay. I'll have my subordinates specially go to the manure pit to find some thatch." Arbor mused that this was a good idea. This was the outcome of deceiving Jojo. Not long after the two left, they heard Commandery Princess Anne's exclamation from the mountain-leaning pavilion. Startled, Arbor turned around and saw 2 giant night-caw birds swooping onto the island in the middle of the lake in broad daylight. At this time, they were currently grabbing at the people inside the mountain-leaning pavilion. The Queen. Arbor turned around and ran toward the mountain-leaning pavilion without even thinking. Xiaomi followed closely behind as she nervously pulled out a long sword. However, before Arbor could run 2 steps, she lost her grip on the sword and it fell to the ground with a clang. Chapter 1483. Arbor's mouth involuntarily twitched. "Stay here and wait for me." After saying this, her figure flashed as she dashed off like a sharp arrow. "Hey, Jojo." Xiaomi was anxious, and she quickly picked up her sword from the ground before chasing after her figure. By the time Arbor reached the mountain-leaning pavilion, he saw that a giant night-caw bird had already pounced into the crowd and was currently being attacked by several royal maidservants. Fortunately, these royal maidservants also knew a bit of martial arts, so they would not be insta-killed by the night-caw bird. Arbor swiftly sent that night-caw bird flying with a burst of mystic energy. He had already arrived in front of the Green Mammy and asked coldly, "Where is the Queen?" Her Majesty left first along a small path with Commandery Princess Anne just now. The Green Mammy quickly replied, not daring to tarry. She was well aware of how powerful the Crown Princess was. If the Crown Princess could lend a helping hand, Her Majesty's side would be safer. As they spoke, a royal guard team also sprinted over and dealt with the night-caw bird in mid-air in a well-trained manner. Arbor summoned Qingwan and the fat squirrel and had them stay here to help the royal guards deal with the night-caw bird. This should be foolproof. Afterwards, he turned to tell Xiaomi, "I'm going to find the Queen. You stay here and don't leave." After saying this, he did not wait for Xiaomi to reply before swiftly dashing off in the direction that the Queen and Ian had left in like a wisp of smoke. Meanwhile, Empress Zhao and Ian were sprinting up the long corridor under the protection of the royal maidservants. Previously, 2 night-caw birds had suddenly attacked the crowd, and they were very intelligent. One of them stayed behind to deal with the royal maidservants, while the other followed the Queen and Ian closely. Fortunately, when the 2 people dashed down the short corridor, that night-caw bird that was relentlessly pursuing them was scraped by the eaves of the corridor, and it was sent flying with a sharp cry. Empress Zhao hurriedly turned around and threw out a burst of Xian energy. In her haste, she missed the target and angered the night-caw bird that was rolling on the ground. It got up and flapped its wings, viciously chasing after the 2 of them. Ian shrieked and turned into the corridor in a panic, running toward the small garden up ahead. At this moment, 4 or 5 shadow guards caught up, and the pressure on the Queen's side was greatly reduced. The shadow guards surrounded and attacked the night-caw bird. At the same time, they turned to Empress Zhao and called out, "Nyang Nyang, you go first." Empress Zhao nodded and said, "Be careful," before following Ian to the other end of the art gallery. There were many flowers and plants planted on both sides of the long corridor. Normally, they looked very pleasing to the eye, but when they were running for their lives, they were always tangled up by the branches and leaves, making them very unsightly. Ian ran to the end of the long corridor in a spurt of energy. Just as she was about to pass through the small arched door, a pair of rotting wings suddenly dropped down in front of her. She saw something that looked like a long-necked crane abruptly appear in front of Ian. It suddenly opened its monstrous mouth and bit at Ian's arm. "Ah!" Ian shrieked with a pale face as she covered her mouth with both hands. The Queen rushed over with flying steps. Then, she picked up the spiritual dagger in her hand, and threw it over. The dagger carried a trace of flowing light, and pierced straight into the long-necked crane's head. It immediately fell to the ground. The queen quickly ran up and pulled out the short blade from the long-necked zombie crane's head. She wiped the blade carelessly with a handkerchief before pulling Ian along and saying, "Let's go quickly, what are you spacing out for?" Ian quivered and quickly nodded. She then passed through the small garden with Empress Zhao and ran toward the main entrance of Yeting Court. Chapter 1484. Just as the two people passed through the garden path, they saw 4 to 5 long-necked zombie cranes swooping down from mid-air. Anxious, Queen Zhao stared at the spirit artifact dagger in her hand and subconsciously swung it. In a split second, the dagger suddenly expanded by a dozen or so inches and turned into a treasured sword. Without any explanation, it cut off the head of one of the corpse cranes. This spiritual weapon short blade was given to her by Arbor previously. Back then, it was the giant ape who seized it from Northern Wei's Fifth Highness, Wei Nanshu. Arbor had given it to Empress Zhao as a present, so it had saved her life this time. While Empress Zhao was fighting the remaining zombie cranes, Ian had already found an opening to slip away first. When Empress Zhao finished dealing with those zombie cranes and looked back, she saw that Ian had already run to the pavilion on the other side, with one foot about to enter the pavilion. Empress Zhao also quickly ran over. Right now, she was already exhibiting an extraordinary speed, so she didn't care about her image when she was fleeing for her life. She dashed over in a disheveled manner, and just as she reached the bottom of the steps, she heard the stern cries of the zombie cranes in mid-air. At this time, she already appeared to be mentally and physically exhausted after a series of battles. As a result, she didn't even dare to look back as she quickly ran up the steps. Just as she was about to dash into the pavilion with Ian to take shelter temporarily, she saw the 2 iron doors abruptly slam shut in front of her. Empress Zhao stared at those 2 closed doors in shock. Unable to stop in time, she bumped into the tightly shut doors with a bang. She couldn't resist pounding on the doors as she shrieked, Ian, hurry and open the door." Ian was scared to death, so how would she dare to open the door? She hastily braced her back against the door as she shook her head in fright. "No, I can't, Your Majesty. There are too many zombie cranes outside, so I can't open the door." Ian. The queen simply didn't dare to believe her ears. That commandery princess Ian, who expressed her filial piety to her day in and day out, wishing that she could treat her as her own mother-in-law. Such a demure, elegant, and beautiful commandery princess, and would actually treat her like this at a critical moment? The queen turned around and saw a group of over 100 corpse cranes flying towards her. She had already dealt with a few corpse cranes earlier, so how could she have the strength to continue? He couldn't help but think to himself, "My life is over." Empress Zhao's face turned snow-white in a split second. She turned around and patted the tightly shut iron door, unwilling to give up. Ian, let me in." On the other side of the door, Ian once again fixed the door sills on the door. Her entire body was trembling uncontrollably, drenched in sweat, as though she had been fished out of the river. No way. She couldn't open the door. With her mediocre skills, if she opened the door, she would die together with Empress Zhao. She was still so young, only 17 years old. She couldn't die like this. In any case, Empress Zhao was also getting on in years, so she could just die by herself. Don't implicate her. Ah. Hearing Empress Zhao's screams outside the door, Ian's heart clenched tightly. She clutched the front of her clothes as she muttered to herself, I'm not being selfish. I just don't want to die, I don't want to die. She covered her ears with her hands as she hastily ran into the attic. She hid at the bottom of the stairs and hugged herself into a ball, not daring to make a sound while trembling. Queen Zhao was drenched in cold sweat as she fought against the flying corpse cranes in a life-and-death struggle. Chapter 1485. She really didn't expect that this trip to Yeting Court would be the day of her death. Empress Zhao couldn't help but smile sadly. She didn't expect that after scheming and scheming, she would end up including her own life. However, she didn't regret it. Consort Cheng and that restless son of hers had delusions of making a move against her crown prince. She naturally had to deal with them before they succeeded so as to avoid harming her son. After Empress Zhao killed another zombie crane, her right arm felt sore and limp, and it drooped down powerlessly. She chuckled self-mockingly as she looked at the flock of zombie cranes that kept pouncing toward her. It turned out that no one could remain calm in the face of death. Because this kind of death was so unacceptable. Roar! After the giant ape's furious roar, the earth trembled incessantly. The giant ape kicked aside 2 zombie cranes and ran toward her with a thud. Empress Zhao looked up in shock and saw a stoic-faced little lady jumping down from the giant ape's head. After glancing at her, she directly started cleaning up the surrounding zombie cranes without a second word. Countless vines squirmed out from her sleeves and whipped at the surrounding zombie cranes. Accompanied by several hundred ice blades piercing through the air, all the approaching zombie cranes were severely injured by her thunderous methods. Empress Zhao only felt her eyes heat up, and an indescribable emotion swelled up in her chest. Sure enough, it was still better to kiss a daughter-in-law. A coquettish B***tch like E, and really couldn't be trusted. No matter how critical she was of this little stoic daughter-in-law before, her daughter-in-law still ran over to save her without any hesitation for her son's sake when encountering such a crisis. However, Empress Zhao's heart contracted tightly. As she watched the little stoic plunging into the zombie crane flock, her palms involuntarily broke out in cold sweat. This was an encirclement of several hundred zombie cranes. However, Empress Zhao's state of mind soon relaxed slightly. Following the crown princess's appearance, several hundred hidden night pavilion's guards also swarmed over. With everyone working together, it would only take minutes to clean up this flock of zombie cranes. Seeing that the situation was under control, the little crown princess quickly flashed to the queen. "Royal Mother, are you all right?" Empress Zhao shook her head with tears brimming in her eyes. She grasped her daughter-in-law's arm tightly. "I'm fine, Royal Mother is fine." This stoic-faced daughter-in-law of hers only looked colder than other people, but after interacting with her for a long time, one would discover that she was still very warm on the inside. "It's good that you're fine." The crown princess's speech, Empress Zhao's bang, Wenzel's a heavy blow. Yan's shriek erupted from inside, followed by the extremely sharp sound of fingernails crawling on the door. Empress. Xiao Mu pushed the queen to the side and kicked open that iron door with a vigorous kick. That iron gate weighed 500 kilograms, but his daughter-in-law was truly valiant. With this kick, that gate collapsed inwards with a loud rumble. Empress Zhao was shocked and couldn't help but sigh ruefully. If this kick landed on a person's body, it would definitely be a kick that could take that person's life. Following the iron gate's collapse, An's disheveled figure rolled out from inside, followed by 2 squawking zombie cranes. 2 rattan vines whipped at the zombie cranes, and with 2 bangs, the zombie cranes' heads exploded. Chapter 1486. These 2 zombie cranes had charged in from the second floor's fence and flew to the first floor's pavilion. They found En, who was hiding in the stairwell, before launching an attack on her. At this time, En had lost all color in her face, and she was trembling all over. Meanwhile, Empress Zhao's expression had also turned very unsightly when she saw this woman. When she recalled how this woman had shut the iron gate tightly in front of her, selfishly not letting her in to hide, the fury in Empress Zhao's chest could not be soothed no matter what. Arba drew an ice sword and aimed it at Commandery Princess An's chest. He asked with an icy expression, "You were caught." An immediately shook her head like a rattledrum. She looked at the young crown princess in horror and screeched repeatedly, "No, no, no. I'm not injured, I'm not. Look, look." An hastily exposed her arms. Sure enough, there was not a single wound on her snow-white arms. I have a defensive mystic weapon. I won't be injured," An said hastily. Empress Zhao swept her a glance with a sneer before turning to leave with Arba with a harumph. An's complexion turned ghastly pale at once. When she recalled what she had done to the queen, she couldn't help but beat her chest in regret. Great, Now that the Queen Dowager did not like her, even Her Majesty the Queen would not like her after today. ****. How could she maintain a foothold in the royal palace like this? Seeing Empress Zhao dragging her youngest daughter-in-law away without looking back, Yan was inwardly resentful. However, she had only taken a few steps down the steps with her head hung low. She suddenly paused when she felt a tingling itch near her navel. When she touched it with her hand, she actually felt several drops of blood. Yan was shocked and hurriedly lowered her head to look. With a pair of trembling snow-white hands, she slowly lifted up her torn clothes a little. Her pupils contracted. Sure enough, Yan saw that there was a small, shallow wound next to her navel, and there were even traces of blood seeping out. How was this possible? Anne's face instantly turned ghastly pale, and her legs swayed as if she was about to fall over. Could it be that when the two corpse cranes pounced on her just now, they were accidentally torn apart by their sharp claws? Anne's body swayed at once, and she looked like the sky was about to collapse. No, nothing will happen. Looking at her skin, it is still bleeding. Since it is bleeding, it means that there is no problem. If they were zombified, it was impossible for them to bleed. Yes, that must be it. Yan took a deep breath and kept consoling herself. When she looked up again, she saw that the little crown princess and Empress Zhao had gone far away. She didn't dare to delay any longer and hurriedly chased after them. Afraid that the little crown princess would discover the wound near her navel, Yan hastily moved her belt up to cover the wound. Fortunately, that wound was relatively shallow, and it stopped moving after a few drops of blood seeped out. As a result, no one would be able to tell that there was a small wound on her stomach. At this time, the stoic-faced little crown princess suddenly turned around and gazed at her suspiciously. Anne was startled, and she reflexively tensed up her body. She looked at her with slight trepidation. "Grand Crown Princess, I think we had better leave this place as soon as possible." "What are you panicking for?" Arba gazed at her coldly. She had already received the news. The well-trained hidden guards had split up into teams to clean up the corpse cranes. Meanwhile, Consort Chang, Lu Fei, and the other royal concubines had only received a bit of shock, and they had already been brought to the main hall by the guards. Chapter 1487. After all, they had made ample preparations beforehand. As long as anyone dared to cause trouble in Yiting Court, regardless of whether they were corpse cranes or night-caw birds, they would not be able to escape the fate of being exterminated. However, the other party had caused such a huge commotion just to scare these weak imperial concubines? Arba frowned slightly as she escorted Empress Zhao and the others to the main hall to meet up with Consort Cheng, Lu Fei, and the others. Xiaomi quickly walked over. Seeing that she was fine, she couldn't help but sigh in relief. "How is it outside?" "There are still many corpse cranes outside. The guards have already formed teams to clear them out. Everyone, don't go out for now." Aoi, who was following behind the little crown princess, answered very naturally. "Stay here." Arba turned and walked out. Empress Zhao hastily grabbed her small hand. "Where are you going?" "Stay here for now and wait for the commotion outside to calm down before going out." "It's fine." Arba calmly pulled Empress Zhao's hand away. "I'll go out and take a look. I'll be right back." With that, her figure flashed and quickly disappeared out the door. Aoi naturally followed closely behind. The Crown Prince had guessed correctly that the organization behind the scenes had made a move, but such a small-scale attack was unexpected. Arba had originally thought that they would send hundreds or thousands of zombies to attack. Presumably, it was unrealistic to mobilize a large number of zombies within northern Mo's fortifications. Therefore, these corpse cranes that could fly became their best choice. Unfortunately, there were too few of them to achieve the desired effect. Arba pursed her lips and quickly walked to the entrance of Yiting Court to take a look. "Did the Crown Prince say when he will be coming?" Many corpse cranes were scattered at the entrance of Yiting Court. They must have been in a fierce battle with the hidden night pavilion. After a while Aoi did not speak. Arba's head slightly exploded. She abruptly turned her head and came face to face with a stiff face covered in rotten flesh. That zombie had grown a pair of incomplete wings on its back. It opened its mouth and moved very quickly to attack her. It opened its mouth so wide that it was almost as wide as its face. It opened to an incomprehensible extent, as if the only thing left on its face was that mouth. Crack! One of Arber's ice blades was crushed by the undead hag's huge fangs. It chewed and swallowed the ice blade. Heh! Arber sneered and quickly stuck a teleportation talisman on himself. With a flash of light, he was already several hundred meters behind the corpse puppet. A wood spirit flew up and instantly condensed into a giant man-eating flower. It opened its mouth and bit at the corpse puppet. The giant man-eating flower swallowed the corpse puppet in one gulp, and its mouth, which was filled with sharp teeth, began to chew. All of a sudden, the man-eating flower formed by the wood spirits began to tremble. It opened its mouth as if it had been choked and spat out the corpse puppet with red skin and green mucus. Roar! The undead hag seemed to be very sullen as it roared at Arber. However, several dozen zombie cranes swooped towards Chow Mu, each of them attacking her without regard for their lives. It seemed that this gargantuan corpse puppet had already evolved to a 5th-grade corpse puppet. Arber's understanding of zombies was broken. After all, in her previous life, she had only encountered 5th-grade corpse puppets at the time of her death. She did not know that the corpse puppets she had encountered in the lower star domain could only be considered low-level corpse puppets at best. Chapter 1488. The one in front of her was clearly on the verge of evolving into a mid-level zombie. This zombie had grown a pair of wings on its back. Although the wings were still very weak right now, they were basically useless. There was no guarantee that they would become extremely powerful in the future. In addition, this zombie was beginning to have the ability to command. In the past, the low-level zombies only knew how to attack without thinking. But now, it was different. This zombie that was about to become a mid-level zombie could use its roars to command its subordinates to attack a single point. After Arber used her vine to send a few corpse cranes flying, she leaped onto the giant ape's head. With a tap of her foot, she chased after the mid-level zombie that had retreated back into the flock of corpse cranes. Whoosh! 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 Arber waved her hand, and countless ice crystals flew toward the zombie. At the same time, her slender figure had already arrived in front of the mid-level zombie. The startled swan dagger suddenly flew out of her conscious and directly attacked the zombie's head, flying over its head with a whoosh. The mid-level zombie tilted its head, dodging the startled swan dagger's attack. As if sensing the great danger of death, it suddenly roared like a madman, attracting even more corpse cranes. Suddenly, a shocking bolt of lightning and fire landed on the mid-level zombie with a boom. Without waiting for the zombie to struggle, it was roasted to cinders by the sudden bolt of lightning and fire. Arber was slightly alarmed. She only felt that this person's attack was swift and fierce. His cultivation was probably on par with Emolien's. She quickly turned her head and first glanced at Aoyi, who was lying on the ground, unable to get up. When she saw that he was fine, she couldn't help but relax. Then, she looked up at the man who had suddenly floated in front of her. Arber opened her mouth slightly, and her body inexplicably entered a state of alert in an instant. This was the first time she had met young Master Omega Kotoku face to face since leaving the Qin estate. Her heart trembled, and her small face turned slightly pale. The second young master in front of her was wearing a light purple robe. His flowing black hair was slightly scattered by the wind. "It's this face, it's this face." Chow Mu was startled, and she suddenly reached out to touch the defensive boundary that had encircled her. This sudden feeling of restraint almost suffocated Arber. He kicked the transparent barrier of the defensive barrier and said coldly, "Let go. Let's talk." A complicated look flashed across the second young master's eyes. He suddenly reached out and subdued her. Without saying a word, he grabbed her wrist and disappeared into the air with her in a flash. After a large group of guards appeared, they looked to the left and right with a puzzled expression on their faces. Many corpse crane corpses lay on the ground. Stay Up Late was lying on one side, unconscious. As for the Crown Princess, she was nowhere to be seen. Where did he go? The guards anxiously shook Aoyi awake. Then, they started a carpet search around Yeting Court, looking for the Crown Princess everywhere. At this time, the young Crown Princess was no longer in Yeting Court. She had been brought by young Master Omega Kotoku to an old residence on the outskirts of the Mo Kingdom capital. At this time, she was glaring at the man in front of her with icy eyes. If you don't let go of me, I can guarantee that you will regret it later. The second young master sighed, his gaze firmly landing on her. Jojo, I had a dream. A very, very long dream. In the dream, I saw you, and I saw myself. Bye-bye. Chapter 1489. In the main hall of Yeting Court, all the concubines and noble ladies waited anxiously. The main door was shut for a long time until a guard pushed it open and entered. What's the situation outside? Where's the Crown Princess? Why hasn't the Crown Princess returned? Xiaomi hurriedly stepped forward and asked, Why aren't you saying anything? Princess, Princess, Your Majesty the Queen. The Crown Princess, she. Bang! A loud sound interrupted the guard's words. Sensing that the sound came from above, the group of powerless concubines and noble ladies involuntarily cried out in alarm and looked up. Gotcha! A small piece of tile was stepped down from the roof. Everyone saw a sharp corpse crane's claw reach in through the crack and couldn't help but huddle together in fright. Aya, we can't be surrounded by a group of corpse cranes, right? Fourth Princess Mo Shuang suddenly shrieked, startling her mother, Lu Fei, who was sitting beside her. Seeing the queen and consort Chang glaring angrily at her, Lu Fei hastily raised her hand to stop the noisy fourth princess. Mo Shuang, shut up. How can I shut up? Now that we're facing a great disaster, are you not even giving me the chance to speak the truth? Mo Shuang jumped up from her stool and paced back and forth in front of everyone. If this continues, we'll all be finished. Hurry and think of a way to charge out. Bailey Zhan withdrew the smile on her face and suddenly summoned a double-winged golden-striped leopard. She turned around and shouted at Qin Susu and Duan Siren, Let's go, we'll kill our way out. Everyone, wait a little longer. We've already notified His Highness Group. I believe they'll come to rescue us soon. Bang bang. The corpse crane's claw once again stepped down a few tiles on the roof. This time, the group of noble ladies looked up and saw half of the corpse crane's rotten face. Ah! Yang Fengyan jumped up in panic and grabbed Qin Susu beside her. Susu, what do we do? Hurry and take me out of here. Hurry and take me away from here. Miss Biao, you stay here. Qin Susu brushed away Yang Fengyan's hand with a serious face. She got up and looked at by Liz Hen, who was sitting on the back of the double-winged golden-striped leopard. She nodded and rushed out the door with Duan Siren and the others. Qin Susu and Duan Siren both summoned their mystical beasts, the green-eyed spirit wolf and the fire-furred rabbit. As soon as they stepped out of the door, they saw more than 10 corpse cranes pouncing in their direction. The three of them worked together and shot their profound energy in all directions. Very quickly, they eliminated those corpse cranes that pounced in front of them. When he looked up, he saw 4 to 5 corpse cranes circling around the roof of the main hall. There weren't many of them, but these long-necked cranes had sharper claws and could tear the roof tiles apart in a few moves. In a flash, the three of them flew up to the roof at the same time. They were about to get rid of the corpse cranes. Suddenly, a loud roar came from behind. Qin Susu, Duan Siren, and Bai Liz Hen immediately felt their hair stand on end as they turned around. The three of them instantly formed a triangle, allowing them to see the situation from 3 different directions. Following the loud roar was a corpse puppet with a pair of incomplete wings on its back. It was extremely ugly. As it moved, the rotten flesh on its body fell off piece by piece. Duan Siren almost vomited her dinner from last night. This corpse puppet gave people a very bad feeling. It was as if the three of them were working together, but it was still somewhat strenuous to deal with it. Chin Susu's eyes suddenly flashed. She instantly attacked, thrusting her long sword towards the corpse puppet's neck. Chapter 1490. However, the instant the sword landed, it deviated slightly and did not hit the zombie. Instead, it completely infuriated it. The rotting zombie bellowed angrily, and several dozen long-necked zombie cranes descended from the sky and attacked the trio while flapping their wings. After Duan Siren and Bailey Zhan chopped off the heads of 2 zombie cranes, they looked up and saw Chin Susu being kicked off the roof by a zombie and rolling all the way down. Roar! The zombie gathered all the zombie cranes and attacked the duo. Just as the dozen or so zombies were about to pounce on them, several whooshing sounds pierced through the air. The arrows flying over instantly shot into the zombie crane's head. The zombie roared angrily at the sky, but before it could leap forward, a purple flame landed on its body like a streak of light, roasting it into a chunk of charcoal that scattered on the ground. Duan Yu and Situ Yi flew to the roof in an instant and cleaned up the surrounding several dozen zombie cranes with a swing of their swords. Duan Siren gasped for breath and looked up at Duan Yu. She involuntarily called out with a wide grin, "Fourth brother." However, Duan Yu coldly swept her a glance and did not say anything. After exchanging a look with Situ Yi, the 2 of them flew down and landed on the steps in front of the main hall. When Empress Zhao and the others heard the sounds of rescue, they quickly opened the door and walked out one after another. The crown prince was dressed in a long black robe and had his hair bound by a jade crown, his back straight. With his back facing Empress Zhao and the others, he whispered to someone before waving his hand to have Yu Xiu lead a group of dragon saliva guards to investigate the situation. On the other side, the royal guard commander Hui Feng and his younger brother Hui Fan also led a group of people over and were cleaning up the remaining zombie cranes along the way. When Empress Zhao saw that her son had arrived, her eyes couldn't help but heat up, and she quickly walked down the steps. Mo Lien saw her mother running over when she turned around, so she went up to support her mother. "Royal mother, you must have been frightened." Empress Zhao quickly shook her head. "It's nothing. Quickly bring more people to look for our daughter-in-law. Our daughter-in-law asked us to stay in the main hall. She ran out alone and hasn't returned yet." Mo Lien was stunned. She turned around and frowned at Stay Up Late, who was running toward her. "What's going on?" "Your Highness, the Crown Prince Consort and this subordinate have arrived at the entrance of Yiting Court. Originally, this subordinate wanted to wait there to meet up with Your Highness, who knew that we would encounter an evolved corpse puppet with wings. During the fight, this subordinate was suddenly hit by an unknown mystic energy and fainted on the spot." Stay Up Late knelt down and blamed himself. "I'm useless. I couldn't protect the Crown Princess. Please punish me, Your Highness." Mo Lien wasn't in the mood to punish him. She turned around and headed straight for the entrance of Yiting Court. His little Crown Princess had disappeared at the entrance of Yiting Court. That could only mean one thing. Someone had kidnapped his Crown Princess during the chaos. He suddenly felt a little apprehensive. Could it be that this farce in Yiting Court was actually aimed at kidnapping her? "Follow him," Liang Qingqing hurriedly called out. A group of sect disciples with excellent combat strength followed the Crown Prince to the entrance of Yiting Court. However, when the Crown Prince and the others arrived at the place that Stay Up Late had pointed out where the little Crown Princess had disappeared, they saw a middle-aged man wearing a metal ghost mask leading a group of more than 3,000 men in black. They suddenly jumped in from outside the wall and attacked the group without a word. Chapter 1491. After exchanging a look with Duan Yu, the Crown Prince abruptly turned and dashed toward the back of Yiting Court's garden. His speed was so fast that it was like a streak of light streaking across the horizon. The man in the Iron Demon mask was taken aback. Then, he waved his hand and led more than 3,000 subordinates in pursuit of the Crown Prince's group. "Hall Master, beware of trickery." The masked Raksha Princess couldn't resist giving a reminder. Northern Prince Mo only brought 1,000 Dragon Saliva Guards and 2,000 Royal Guardsmen on this trip. The man in the Iron Demon mask snorted. "How could those good-for-nothings be our match? Chase. As soon as he said the word chase, the group of black-clothed men who were rapidly dashing after him all increased their speed, gliding past like cold stars. Under the dusk of the night, the Crown Prince, Duan Yu, Situ Yi, and a group of about 100 sect disciples were seen dashing to the back of the garden. The Crown Prince suddenly stopped. Duan Yu and the others also naturally stopped and turned to look at the group of black-clothed men who were rapidly chasing after them and surrounding them. Mo Lian's gaze swept up and down the black-clothed, iron-masked man's body before abruptly chuckling. "You coward, why don't you tear off your veil and let everyone see your true appearance?" The man in the Iron Demon mask cracked a smile, and his voice was a bit rough. "Does Your Highness the Crown Prince want to die knowing the truth? Unfortunately, you won't have this chance." Mo Lien chuckled. "Haven't I told you before that overly proud people will die very quickly?" With a wave of his hand, figures surged out from the surrounding trees and flowers. Under the leadership of Yu Xiu and Hui Feng, over 1,000 dragon saliva guards and imperial army guards swiftly surrounded these black-clothed men, forming 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. As a result, the man in the Iron Demon mask and his group became sandwiched between enemies from both inside and outside. However, he smiled mockingly at Mo Lien. "You think these little guardsmen from the lower star domain can take us down?" Deske. Duan Yu couldn't resist shaking his head. "I don't know if you were born arrogant or stupid. Can't you tell even now? This is a trap set up for you. You're dead for sure today. Heh, what's the point of talking nonsense with an idiot? Do it." Liang Qingqing shouted and suddenly pulled out a silk net as thin as a cicada's wing. At the same time, a transparent net also appeared in the hands of the 2 sect's disciples, including Duan Yu, Situ Yi, Bailey Shi, and Wei Nanfeng. The 100 people worked together and leaped into the air. They tore apart the net in their hands. An inescapable net covered the sky and covered the earth as it flew towards the black-clothed men. Mo Lien also leapt into the air, shooting out hundreds and thousands of purple flames from her fingers. Once this flame fell on the inescapable net, it immediately emitted a purple smoke, which formed a fire net in an instant. The black-clothed men who were caught in it were so frightened that they jumped up and resisted. Right now, they were like turtles caught in a jar. There was a net of fire above their heads, and if they retreated, they would be annihilated by the well-trained guards led by Yu Xiu and Hui Feng. If they advanced, they would be even more miserable. If they encountered the 2 sect's disciples, they would either be roasted to death or shaken to death by the mystic energy. Mo Lien swiftly threw down a dozen purple lotuses, which abruptly exploded in the midst of the black-clothed crowd, causing the crowd of black-clothed people to suffer greatly. Chapter 1492. Strangely enough, no matter how the purple flames wildly scuttled and wantonly swept through the crowd, the inescapable net above them would not be destroyed. After a period of panic, the man in the Iron Demon mask hastily shouted, "Don't push and shove each other. Gather your strength and tear apart the fire net above us first." It could be said that his action was very wise, but unfortunately, that web-like thing was actually very flexible. No matter how much firepower they gathered to blast open a corner, it was to no avail. The man in the Iron Demon mask couldn't help but feel terrified when he saw his black-clothed subordinates collapse one by one. There were already over 500 casualties. With a roar, everyone carried the fire net over their heads and quickly moved in the direction of the clear stream. However, his movement disrupted the formation instead, allowing Yu Xiu, Hui Feng, and the other royal guards to quickly pounce on him and swiftly kill over 200 people. The Raksha princess blended into the crowd and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She only felt that if this continued, their group would probably be wiped out by the Crown Prince and the others. "I'll leave it to you guys." Mo Lien was anxious to find his wifey, so how could he have the time to continue bickering with the man in the Iron Demon mask? Hence, he handed over command to Duan Yu and the others while he led a small group and swiftly left. When the man in the Iron Demon mask saw this, his lungs were about to explode from anger. Northern Prince Mo was completely disregarding his group. What did this mean? It meant that this lofty crown prince didn't treat them as opponents at all. Kill! The man in the iron demon mask roared angrily and waved his hand to instruct his subordinates to protect him as they continued retreating toward the clear stream. There was a bamboo forest at the other end of the clear stream, so he expected that the fire net above them would be affected by the bamboo forest's obstacles after entering. However, he was truly too naive. 5 minutes later, when he discovered that his group was still trapped in the bamboo forest, he couldn't help but panic. He had already lost over 1,000 subordinates along the way, and there were less than 2,000 black-clothed subordinates left. If this were to continue, wouldn't they be tortured in this Yating court sooner or later? Duan Yu involuntarily snorted as he looked at the flustered demon-masked leader. What? Do you think my all-encompassing net is a joke? Like I said, all of you will die here today. Summon your mystic beasts to defend. With the ghost-masked man's command, all the mystic cultivators above level 10 in the group started to summon their mystic beasts. However, great mystic cultivators were still rare in the end. Among the 2,000 people, only 200 or so people could summon their mystic beasts, and a portion of them were support-type mystic beasts that didn't have much combat ability. It was a bloody battle, almost a one-sided slaughter. This made the eyes of the man with the iron ghost mask bloodshot. He suddenly took out a shining white bead from his pocket. Not good. Level 15 Profound Energy Bead. Situ-E shouted loudly, reaching out his hand to block the crowd that was charging upwards. Everyone retreat. Die. The man in the iron mask viciously glared and abruptly injected all the mystic energy in his hand into that bead. After a huge boom, countless people were sent flying by the mystic energy bead's power and crashed to the ground with a thud. Chapter 1493. Waving away the thick smoke in front of him, Duan Yu gazed coldly at the giant sinkhole that had appeared in the center. Countless men in black had died in that sinkhole, and the ghost-masked man had already disappeared without a trace. In order to escape, he completely disregarded the lives of his subordinates? Duan Yu's lips curled as he sneered inwardly. He sighed and said, "Did he think he could escape?" Cough, cough. Yu Xiu covered his face with his sleeves and waved away the thick smoke in front of him. He ordered sternly, "They can't have escaped far. 30 people in a team and eliminate all the enemies that have escaped to every corner of Yating Court." Everyone responded in unison and formed well-trained teams. Duan Yu looked up at the overcast sky and said to Situ-E, "Let's go. We don't need too many people. Let's go meet that half-dead ghost-masked man." Liang Qingqing quickly followed. "I also want to go and see what kind of person is pretending to be a ghost over there. He even dares to tame something as disgusting as a zombie, heh." In the outskirts of the Mo Kingdom capital, inside a pitch-black old residence, the sky had completely darkened, and lightning flashed across the night sky. It looked like a heavy rainstorm was about to descend. Abba didn't know how long she had been cooped up in this small room. She was so irritated that she kept kicking the defensive barrier in front of her. That D**Men Omega Kotoku, why hadn't he died from mystic energy exhaustion after trapping her in this defensive barrier for such a long time? Creak. There was a light sound. The door was pushed open. Staring at the young sir who walked in, Abba's eyes could practically shoot out flames. "What are you doing?" Sir Omega Kotoku leaned to the side and had the servants bring in dinner, placing it on the short table in front of Abba. After the door to the side room closed, there were only the two of them in the room, and the air instantly stilled. "I said just now that I only want to have a good talk with you." On the other side, Mo Lien, who had led her men out of Yating Court and was carefully searching along the lake, suddenly paused in her steps. She took out a green vine from her inner world and gripped it tightly. There was actually no reaction. Why? Logically speaking, as long as he didn't leave the vicinity of the Mo Kingdom capital, he only needed to hold onto Chocho's vine to connect with it and be brought into Jojo's paradise planet. This situation could only mean one thing. Jojo was currently under someone's control, and his spiritual awareness was most likely sealed. Even Jojo himself could not communicate with the sapling. When she thought of this, Emolienne became even more anxious. Just as she was about to turn around and ask Duan Yu for help, she saw Duan Yu, Situ Yi, Liang Qingqing, Wei Nanfeng, and Bailey Shi swiftly leaping towards her. Jojo is really gone, Emolienne said with a frown. Let's find that ghost-masked man first. I think Jojo's disappearance should be related to him, Duan Yu said coldly. Situ-Yi frowned and suggested another idea. Could it be? Someone took advantage of the ghost-masked man's attack to rob little junior sister while the ghost-masked man was leading his men? Emolienne, you said that this organization that created zombies wanted to cause a great disaster in the Mo Kingdom capital, but why didn't they go to the downtown area to cause trouble instead of coming to such a desolate Lake Heart Island's Yiting court? Wei Nanfeng shook his head and said, Say, they couldn't have come for the little miss, right? Let's go. The more Emolienne listened, the more apprehensive she felt. She didn't want to delay any longer. Taking out their communication jade tablet, the group identified their target and chased after Gale Forest after exiting the lake. Chapter 1494. The ghost-masked man didn't know that his whereabouts had already been exposed. With the Raksha princess's support, he stumbled all the way to Gale Forest. At this time, the people lying in ambush in Gale Forest all revealed themselves and took out the clothes they prepared beforehand for the ghost-masked man to change into. The Raksha princess's eyes flickered, and she cupped her hands in salute. We will go our separate ways. You guys enter the city, and I will return to the Raksha ghost sect first. After saying that, she swiftly left. A woman wearing a white veil involuntarily gnashed her teeth in resentment. This woman is extremely slippery when she encounters trouble. Forget it, let's enter the city first. The ghost-masked man changed into scholarly attire with a scholarly headscarf wrapped around his head. His ordinary face didn't have much expression. Just as the group exited the forest, they heard gusts of wind whistling through the air. The scholarly man's expression changed, and he hastily yelled, Go! Unfortunately, he hadn't even dashed out a few steps when Emolienne, Duan Yu, and the others rushed over and blocked his path. Your Excellency Siming Manor's High Priest. Hehe, so you really are an old friend. Duan Yu scoffed. He flicked the jade heavenly thunder in his hand and suddenly aimed it at the other party. He said with a smile, It's best if you don't move. Were you the ones who captured the crown princess? Emolienne asked coldly. Confess honestly, and we will give you a quick death. Everyone, is there a misunderstanding? A faint smile appeared on the high priest's scholarly face. The crown prince's consort? Our Siming Manor is heading to the Mo Kingdom capital on this trip, so we haven't seen the crown princess. Stop pretending, all right? We followed you all the way here. Take out your ghost mask. HM? Liang Qingqing folded her arms and smiled mockingly at the high priest. The high priest's frail face slowly turned gloomy. His face suddenly twitched and he laughed sinisterly. I really underestimated you, bunch of juniors. Wei Nanfeng moved his fists and legs and smiled at the high priest. So it's one of the famous 4 great villas, Seeming Villa's high priest. Now, can you tell us what organization you're working for? Huh? Tell me about it. Let's chat. The high priest snorted and involuntarily took 2 steps back. Do you think you can catch me? As soon as she finished speaking, Emolienne's finger moved and a flame spirit whip shot towards the high priest. At the same time, Abba stared expressionlessly at the Omega Kotoku through the transparent barrier. Are you born to be so cold? No, I remember that when I carried you out of that secret room, you looked at me with a very grateful gaze. At that time, you were not as cold and emotionless as you are now. Omega Kotoku propped up his chin with one hand and looked at the girl in front of him in a daze. He seemed to have a lot to say to her. That strange dream, let's call it a previous life for the time being. That continuous and strangely sorrowful dream made Omega Kotoku, who had walked through the course of his previous life, feel very uncomfortable. Jojo, tell me, was that dream real? You stayed by my side for a full 4 years. It was fake, Arber glanced at him coldly and mocked. Second young master, you aren't so stupid that you can't distinguish between dream and reality, right? Chapter 1495. No, I don't believe it. The experience in the dream was so real. How could it be fake? Chin Exon suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed Arber's wrist, asking with an agitated expression, Jojo, tell me, all of this is real, it's real. You're crazy. Arber threw his hand away and coldly glared at him. It's all fake. What 4 years, what dream? I don't know anything about it. You're lying to me. Your eyes tell me that you're lying to me. You know. Chin Exon coldly stared at Xiao Mu's eyes, wanting to dig out some peculiar emotion from her emotionless and apathetic eyes. However, there was nothing at all. At the entrance of the Qin estate, when I first saw you, I had a very familiar feeling. And you, I remember your reaction at that time completely showed that you knew me, right? Heh. Arber sneered and turned his head to glance at him indifferently. He said in a very sarcastic tone, I took a few more glances at you because at that time, at the entrance of the Qin estate, a bunch of sick women were looking at you. I was just curious. Don't think too much about other things. Liar. Chin Exon forced these 2 words out from between his teeth. He suddenly stretched out his hand and firmly grabbed her weak shoulder, shaking it hard. You're lying to me. You clearly remember me. Isn't it? Isn't it? You're crazy. Arber kicked him hard. Only separated by the defensive barrier, this kick landed on the barrier. Hateful damned man. His hands could pass through the defensive barrier and grab her at any time, and any attack she kicked over was blocked by the defensive barrier. Hateful to the extreme. Let go. This nightmarish man could actually remember everything from her previous life? Was he joking with her? How could it be? She was reborn, but this man wasn't. How could he remember those painful memories from her previous life? How could he? Scram. Arber ruthlessly kicked the defensive barrier again, his eyes spitting out flames of anger. Why was this person so annoying? What right did he have to act like they were close friends and not let go of her shoulder? Disgusting. Arber used all his strength to push away the Omega Kotoku's hands. He tried to kick it, but it was bounced back by the defensive enchantment. She took a few steps back and sat down on the stool. Do you hate me that much? The second young master stared at her coldly, and a self-mocking smile appeared on his lips. But do you know how much I like you? When Arber heard the word like, it was as if he had been stung by a poisonous snake. His whole body trembled and he subconsciously shrank back. She raised her head and stared at the second young master warily. Her eyes were filled with wariness and disdain. Get lost. Never say the word, like, to me. Don't fall in love with me, or else you won't be able to bear the consequences. Xiao Mu coldly glanced at him, as if hearing the word like from this person's mouth was inconceivable and unbelievable. Why can't I say like? In my dream, you clearly looked at me with a like expression. Bullshit. Is it really good to think so highly of yourself? See you tomorrow. Chapter 1496. That was because in the beginning, it was this elegant and calm man who had pulled her out of hell. She was grateful for that. Back then, it was as if she was grabbing onto a fleeting light, holding onto him tightly, wanting to rely on this person. She thought that he was a good person. However, in the end, it was just a joke that brought disgrace upon herself. Arber's eyes were cold and filled with coldness. When he looked at the person in front of him, there was no warmth at all. Such a gaze seemed to provoke this person, causing him to suddenly laugh. No. Really no? Arber's pupils shrank, as if he was going to say something scary. She hurriedly interrupted him. Shut up. Why don't you let me continue? What are you afraid of? Heh. Arber threw him a mocking look. I just don't want to listen to your nonsense. Jojo, in the dream, you clearly had feelings for me, Sir Omega Kotoku said with certainty. Arbor looked at him sarcastically. You think too highly of yourself. In the dream? What dream? Everything in the dream. How can it be real? Arbor was too lazy to argue with him. This was no longer her previous life. She could only say that this person was too annoying if he insisted on harping on the past. Moreover, was there anyone who knew her feelings better than her? She had never liked him in her previous life. Rather than saying that she liked him, it was better to say that she had once seen him as her savior. Back then, she had been so desperate, and this person had suddenly descended upon her like a god, saving her from hell. However, the other party had only treated her as a little pet. If he liked her, he would touch her head. If he didn't like her, he would heartlessly starve her for 3 days and 3 nights. In order to tame this disobedient little pet of his, he could leave her there to fend for herself for many days. To let her be like a little worm, using her head to wander in the dark, so dirty and lowly that she almost couldn't believe it. That was her past. Such a cold-blooded and heartless man, just because of that so-called dream in her previous life, suddenly opened his mouth and said that he liked her? Haha. Don't you think you've blasphemed the word like? Liking someone meant treating them as a pet. Liking someone meant that they wanted to be their master. Liking someone meant that they could bully them, tame them, and make them obedient? This kind of liking, whoever wants it can take it. Arbor couldn't afford it. In her previous life, when this cold man starved her for a few days and nights and realized that he could not tame her, she did not know if something went wrong or if he suddenly had a conscience, but he suddenly changed his attitude towards her. What was the use of that? At that time, she had already been completely defeated by the loss of her dignity. At that time, she had already lost her heart. She had personally let go of the man she had once seen as her savior. She no longer had any feelings for him. Even if he treated her like a baby in the future, no matter how well he treated her, it would be useless. She didn't even want to hear, see, or ask anything about him. Even if she heard or saw anything, she would choose to forget about it. When they met in this life, she couldn't even remember his surname. In Arbor's eyes, this second young master in front of him was probably a little crazy. I didn't want you for a long time. Arbor's cold words were like a sharp arrow, ruthlessly piercing into the second young master's heart. Chapter 1497. She had abandoned him a long time ago. The Omega Kotoku's pupils constricted as he stared at the young lady in front of him with a strange gaze. He did not know why, but at this moment, he really wanted to reach out and grab her. No, he wanted to hug her. He wanted to hug this emotionless young lady tightly. No. Let go. He just wanted to be willful and not let go of her for once. Bam! Seeing him reach out to grab her, Arbor kicked him away with all his might and dodged to the side. If he did not like her, then he did not like her. Why bother? Besides, it was useless to bother her. She should have thrown away these unhappy memories of the past, shouldn't she? Not a single one of these unimportant people would be able to touch his heartstrings. She could not be pulled into the abyss by this person in front of her again. She could not be confined to the nightmares of the past. She had to break free. She had to break free and be reborn in her state of mind. Otherwise, it would not be beneficial to her future path of cultivation. That's the right way to think. Kill him, kill this person in front of you, and you will be able to destroy your inner demon once and for all. The right path is right in front of you. A cold voice suddenly appeared in her conscious. It was chilly, like ice and snow pouring down from a high mountain. Under the falling peach blossoms, a tall red figure suddenly appeared beside her. It was so sudden that the Omega Kotoku could not help but be shocked. He looked at the venerable peach blossom immortal, who had suddenly appeared. Bam! However, in the next second, something even more shocking happened. The defensive boundary that was originally encircling Xiao Mu's body was actually shattered by the red-clothed man who had suddenly appeared with a powerful strike. A force of backlash swept over him, catching the Omega Kotoku off guard. He spat out a mouthful of blood. "You are not from this star region." Chin Xian's eyes became extremely cold in an instant. She looked coldly at the man who had suddenly appeared to disturb her. "Jojo, don't hesitate and be soft-hearted. Take this opportunity to kill your inner demon." The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal raised his 5 fingers. Several thorns formed by the wood spirit suddenly shot out and flew over in a zigzag manner. Chin Xian was not surprised to see this. After all, it was not strange for an unknown expert who was not from Seekong Planet to know how to use the power of the wood spirit. He quickly struck out a palm, and a thunder fire landed on the thorns. He had thought that this thunder fire would be able to block the thorns no matter what, but he was wrong. This red-clothed man who had appeared out of nowhere had a cultivation that was much higher than his own at this moment. The thorns directly passed of the thunder fire and wrapped around his 4 limbs and bound him tightly. With a tug, second young Master Chin was actually pulled into the air by the brambles, and he stared at that smiling red-clothed man with an extremely frosty gaze. "Do you know what price you have to pay?" This man had used the supreme saint power in the lower star region. Although it was only a little, it was enough to incur the wrath of the heavenly Tao. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal shrugged with a playful expression. He turned to look at the little girl who was clenching her fists tightly and not moving. "Jojo, kill him quickly. What are you still hesitating for?" The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal came to her side in a flash. With a wave of his finger, more and more thorns wound around Chin Xian's body like twisting poisonous snakes. "Now is the time to deal with your inner demons." Chapter 1498. Xiao Mu reflexively bit her small lips, her small face as white as snow. After hearing the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's words again, Abba pulled open a transparent and shiny bow made of ice crystals. That big bow made of ice crystals spun in her fair little hand. In her other hand, a snow-white arrowhead gradually formed. She knocked it on the big bow and aimed it straight at the Omega Kotoku's heart. "You really want to kill me?" The Omega Kotoku closed his eyes in pain. "That's right. I owed you in my previous life. If you want me to pay you back in this life, I have no complaints. Xiao Qiao, in this world, only you can make me die willingly. Since you want me to die, then I will die. What am I afraid of? I am so fearless. Death will only bring me closer to you." Abba's hand that was holding the bow trembled slightly. Suddenly, she heard the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's indifferent voice. "Jojo, don't hesitate. If you don't get rid of your inner demon, how will you grow in the future? Do it quickly. Show the greatest courage of your life." Yes. She wanted to kill him. She could not let him come into her life again. She could not let him become her inner demon. She could not let him have the chance to get close to her. Whether it was Chin Xian or Fan Qiuhe, the nightmares of her previous life would be cut off by her own hands. "Farewell forever. The nightmare of my life. Don't ever think of bothering me. You have no value in existing anymore." Abba's eyes were replaced by a cold and resolute look. With a clang, the arrowhead pierced through the air and shot straight toward Chin Xian's heart. At that moment, her cold eyes fell on his smiling face. She stared at him with an incomparably cold gaze. She could not describe the feelings in her heart. Carefree? Yes. Release her anger? That seemed to be the case. Perhaps it was more of a release. It was an indescribable joy to be released from the nightmare of her previous life. She, Abba, would never be disturbed by this nightmare again. It was time to walk out of it. "Ciao ciao." Chin Xian called out in a low voice. The last thing she saw was his scattered black hair, and that slightly miserable handsome face. Xiao Mu's eyes abruptly widened. Boom! He looked at the Omega Kotoku in front of him. Like a cluster of broken stars, he suddenly shattered into pieces in front of him. Abba couldn't help but frown. There seemed to be something wrong with this fragmented scene. How could a perfectly fine person disintegrate into pieces like a broken soul? Before she could think further, a large warm palm gently stroked her head. Good girl, you did well. In the future, when you are faced with even greater despair and difficulties, you can think about it. You are a person who can personally cut off your own inner demons. You. Fearless. Abba turned his head to look at him. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly as he reached out and grabbed his sleeve. What's wrong with you? I'm leaving. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked regretfully at the invisible chains on his limbs. He couldn't shake them off and couldn't help but roll his eyes at the sky. All right, I'll go by myself. You don't have to use so many heavenly Tao chains to keep me hanging, okay? Where are you going? Abba grabbed his sleeve tightly in panic. Hey, I'm going to a fun place. Don't worry. When you want to summon me again, I will appear. Chapter 1499. It's just that. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal tilted his head in embarrassment and smiled. If I don't respond for a long time, it means that I haven't come out of that place. Where did you go? Abba tugged at his sleeves, her eyes wide open. Is it dangerous? Is it like what Chin Xian said, that you used a special ability to be targeted by the heavenly axiom? You're hiding in our Paradise Planet. That's right. If I hide in Paradise Planet, will the heavenly axiom still be able to find me? After the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal said this, the dozens of heavenly axiom locks on his body suddenly increased to 50 to 60. They dragged him out of the courtyard. Damn, heavenly axiom, do you have to be so cruel? It's not like I don't want to go. Let me drink some good wine. How many years has it been since I last ate meat and drank wine? What joy was there in cultivating in that vast expanse of whiteness every day? I might as well not. Damn. Suddenly, the heavenly axiom locks on his back, hands, and legs increased to a few hundred. He dragged the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal out of the door. Hence, Xiao Mu hugged his arm tightly. She felt like her body had been stabbed by countless blades, and it was so painful that she wanted to die. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's expression changed slightly. He tried to pull his arm out of her hands. Little girl, let go. Little girl, do you think you can stop the heavenly axiom? Let go. I won't. How could she watch a person who had helped her multiple times be dragged to some unknown place by the heavenly axiom? Silly girl, what can happen to me? The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who was being pulled back by the heavenly axiom locks, looked down at her helplessly. I'm really fine. Isn't it just a trip to the punishment realm? I used to go there often too. Big liar. What punishment realm? It didn't sound like a good place. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who had successfully become a big liar, stretched out his hands helplessly. However, his hands were bound by the heavenly axiom locks and he couldn't move at all. He couldn't even pat her head to comfort her. With a slightly regretful gaze, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal said, I'm not a big liar. My name is Hui Chen. Remember it. Also, the cultivation level of your inner demon's main body is actually about the same as mine. You have to be careful when you go to the upper 3 continents. Peach Blossom. The little fellow pounced with all its might and caught hold of a section of his sleeve. The corner of the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's mouth twitched helplessly. I already said that you're not called Peach Blossom. You're called He Chen. This child is really thoughtless. Why is he so worrisome? In the next second, an open black door suddenly appeared behind the celestial venerable. The passage was so deep that one couldn't see the end of it. Abba only glanced at it for a moment before he felt the world spinning around him. He was sent flying by a huge force. Heavenly Tao! Why did you throw her? I'm not done with you! The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal shouted angrily. The moment the black door slammed shut, he and his voice disappeared without a trace. Rotten peach blossom. Arbor was about to lunge forward when he suddenly hit a thick wall. She looked up and saw that the great ape had suddenly appeared in front of her. Her head hit the great ape's fat belly. Her head hurt so much that tears welled up in her eyes. Chapter 1500. Rotten Peach Blossom was dragged to some unknown place. What should she do? She panicked for no reason. When she suddenly heard the words, Punishment Realm, she felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. It was as if she had heard someone mention it before. Chocho. Chocho, who was trying hard to play dead, did not make a sound for a long time. Chocho. Master. The little tray ant Dodo hopped out from Paradise Planet and climbed up her left shoulder in a flash. The two little tree branches matched each other, and it lowered one of its branches and said, Master, you tell me what you want to tell me. Chocho will definitely tell you everything I know. That punishment realm that Rotten Peach Blossom talked about, is it really not dangerous? That's heavenly Tao, in order to punish, what are you, about? Tell me quickly. He sounded like he was trying to think of a way to trick her into going over while talking. What kind of situation was it, and it still wanted to hide it from her? It was simply preposterous. The little tray ant raised its little head pitifully and did not dare to continue hiding from its little master who was about to go berserk. It hurriedly said, It's like this, master. That's because powerhouses above the deity realm are all very powerful, and even Heavenly Tao cannot kill them wantonly. Therefore, Heavenly Tao specially set up a 17-story tower of punishment. Cough, it's just to suck in disobedient powerhouses above the deity realm like the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and train them. Actually, it's not that dangerous. It's just a little troublesome. Arbor turned and glared at the little tree. Before this, the Venerable Immortal had always stayed in our Paradise Planet, and Heavenly Tao could not do anything to him. Therefore, when the Venerable Immortal used his holy power this time, the Heavenly Tao could not tolerate it anymore. That's why he was dragged to the punishment realm. Little Master, you can just imagine that punishment realm as you don't even need to imagine it. It's just a 17-story tower. As long as the Venerable Immortal passes this 17-story tower, he can come out. What if he can't pass it? Arbor stared at Chocho with a pair of round eyes and asked. If he can't pass it, he'll be locked up for 180 years, the little tree muttered to itself. What? Arbor's eyes widened. Don't be nervous, little master. Don't worry. This was definitely not the first time he had entered the celestial realm. Look at him just now. Indifferent, right? That cool and unrestrained, right? You clearly don't look scared at all. Little Tree continued, just think of the Tower of Punishments as a place for cultivation. Actually, it's pretty good. It can help people improve their cultivation quickly, right? What about Emolien? Your Highness, you don't have to worry at all. After going in, they would definitely be able to come out. At most, we'll spend 100 years in there. How can the Heavenly Tao not let us go? The sapling Chocho blurted out before realizing what it had just said. She immediately widened her beady eyes and looked at her young master's almond-shaped eyes. She hurriedly used the branch to slap her own mouth. 100 years? Darling Chow's voice trembled, and her eyes turned red. She looked like she was about to cry. Chocho, who was tricked into telling the truth by her young master, immediately slapped her own mouth again and grumbled, Nonsense, nonsense. Master, don't worry. Nothing will happen to His Highness the Crown Prince. That you're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.